Hi everyone, Caitlin here. I am going to do kind of a quick overview of my labor and delivery and how everything went. This will start off on the 17th. Grayson's birthday was on the 18th. And I started laboring at home around 8 p.m. The night before she was born. That's when I first started getting the first really good contractions coming along. I was having contractions about 3 minutes apart at this point, and they were starting to pick up and get more intense. So this was at 8 p.m. on the 17th. Finally, around 1:30 in the morning on the 18th, they got to the point where they were getting, pretty strong, to the point where I'm thinking like, okay, maybe I should, go in, get checked, see what things are, how things are going. Because at my last appointment, I was 2 centimeters dilated and 75% effaced. Well, we went in to labor and delivery. Excuse me. We went in to labor and delivery. They checked me as soon as I got there, and I was still 2 centimeters and 75% effaced, which was absolutely no change from my last doctor's appointment. I was so frustrated because I had been having some crazy contractions, and I was thinking, okay, maybe this isn't, maybe I just don't dilate very well. Well, that was at 1:30 when they checked me, and then they said, okay, we're going to monitor your contractions and then check you a couple hours later, which they did, and they came back in around 3:30 in the morning, and I was still the exact same. When she checked me this time, though, I had more of a bloody show, and my mucus plug was starting to come out. But they still don't take that as change. That's just natural ways for your body to go into labor. So change is dilation to them. Change is effacement and dilation. And so that was at 3:30, and then they gave me the option of either getting checked again in a couple of hours, staying at the hospital, getting checked in a few hours, or going home and laboring at home, because they said I was in the early stages of labor, I just wasn't inactive. And so I decided to stay for a couple of hours, see how things are going, because at this point my contractions were, pretty strong. And then come 5:30 in the morning, a few hours later, they checked me again. I was still the exact same, 2 centimeters and 75% effaced. I was so frustrated at this point. And then I have a feeling when she checked me this last time at 5:30 that she kind of stirred things up a little in there, because I started having a pretty big bloody show, to the point where I actually wore one of those huge pads home with me. They sent me home at this point. That was at 5:30. And then at, I'm reading some notes here. I was sent home at 5:30 with no change, but my contractions were still 3 minutes consistently apart from each other. Around 6:30 to 7:30, I told my husband to go to bed because they sent me home. They didn't know how long it was going to be, and he was actually planning on going to work that day. So he went upstairs to go to bed, and thankfully my mom came home and stayed with me just because of how consistent my contractions were. So my mom came home with me, and we stayed downstairs, and I was on the couch. And at this point, my contractions were intense. I mean, to the point where I was moaning pretty loud through them, and I could not talk, and it was getting pretty intense. And my mom said, okay, these are getting to the point where, you can't even talk through them, so I'm going to go upstairs, take a quick shower. This was at 7:30 in the morning. My mom was going to go upstairs, take a quick shower, and as soon as she got upstairs, she actually went to use the restroom before she got in the shower, and I was still on the couch downstairs, and all of a sudden I felt this pop, and my water had broke. It literally felt like a balloon. I didn't hear a popping sound, but it felt like a balloon popped inside of me. And I was laying flat at this point on the couch, and I was thinking to myself, like, okay, I'm pretty sure my water just broke, because it felt, I felt something different. And so I yelled upstairs to my mom, and she came downstairs, and I said, Mom, I think my water just broke. But I still had that huge pad on from the hospital, so I'm thinking like, okay, I'm going to stand up, this pad's going to catch it, and it's going to be good. So I stood up, and it was just a gush of water. And it was such a strange feeling. I felt like I was peeing my pants, and it started going through the pad, and so my mom goes, what do I do? What do I do? And so she went into the kitchen and got a dish towel and put it in between my legs. And we walked to the bathroom. My mom and Joe got me new pants, new change of clothes to go to the hospital. And then we were off to the hospital. We arrived at the hospital at 8:15. And at this point, arriving to the hospital, my water did break. And I was 4 centimeters dilated and 100% effaced by the time I got to the hospital at 8:15. Now, if you think about this, they sent me home at 5:30, so in between 5:30 and 8:15, my water broke, and I dilated up to 4, and I was 100%. As soon as I got to the hospital, I did not want the epidural right away, but I asked for some Nubain in my IV to kind of take the edge off, and but I was all for the epidural. If you guys watched my other videos, you knew that I was leaning towards that if I would need it, and I wanted it because it was pretty intense at this point. But like I said, when I first got there, I did get Nubain through my IV just to take the edge off. And the anesthesiologist came in and talked to me because I was going to get the epidural. He came in and talked to me about everything, and since I have this blood clotting disorder, I had been on aspirin the whole pregnancy. So he had to take lab work before giving me the epidural. And so they did the lab work, and it came back like a half an hour later. And my platelet level was way too low to even think about getting an epidural. So I was not allowed to have it. I had to go the all-natural route. And so at 8:15, I was 4 centimeters and 100%. At 9:20, we got my platelet levels back. And by the time they checked me at this point, so from 8:15 to 9:20, I went to 6 centimeters and 0 station. I was already 100% at this point. He came in and told me that I was not allowed to have the epidural. And at first I thought he was kidding with me. I said, "You're joking, right?" And he said, "No, I'm sorry. You just, you can't have it. It's too dangerous." And so at this point, since I was 6 centimeters, I asked if I could have another dose of Nubain through my IV, because it was starting to, wear a little bit, or if I could have a little more of a dose. And they said, no, we can't give you anything else at this point because you're too far along and you're dilating pretty quickly. So, that was at 9:20, I was 6 centimeters. Then at 10:20, they came in and checked me again. I was 6.5 centimeters, but plus 1 station, so baby came down a little bit more. Then at 11 o'clock, I felt a lot of pressure in my bottom. But then they checked me again, and I did not have any more progress at this point, so I was still 6.5, and plus 1 station. I was having a lot of bleeding though, but when the nurse checked me, she said that I had, it was just the cervix vessel, like my blood vessels bursting, and they were going to keep an eye on the bleeding at this point. At 11:25 in the morning, they checked me again, and I was 7 to 8 centimeters, mostly 8, plus 1. And then not even a half an hour later, they checked me again. I was 9 centimeters with plus 1, and I had such a strong urge to push at this point. And they are so right when they say your body just naturally kind of pushes, because I tried so hard not to push when they told me not to push, but your body just pushes when it needs to. And then by the time finally at 12, 10 minutes after 12, they checked me, and I was 10 centimeters, and it was time to push. The doctor gave Joe one leg, my husband one leg, and my mom one leg, and my mother-in-law was also in the room, and she kind of kept me cool, cooled me down, had a cool washcloth, was wiping off my face, that whole thing. I did use a birthing mirror so I could see the progress that I was making during my pushes, which was, I recommend that to anybody, especially if you're doing it all natural, because you can really get the sense of, okay, this is a better push because she came down further. I want to just say, when I first went into the hospital, I was moaning pretty loudly, pretty heavily, because I was in pain. But I was kind of in the mindset, okay, I'm going to get the epidural soon, everything will be better, I'll be able to relax a little bit more, but I was still not in a good mindset when I first got to the hospital. When the anesthesiologist came in and said, okay, you know, I'm so sorry, but you're not allowed to have the epidural, my whole mindset just changed. I can't explain it. Something inside of me clicked, and I was completely silent at this point. I was just having to breathe through the contractions, and I was not screaming, I was not yelling, I was not cussing. I was completely silent at this point. I was so silent to the point where if Joe or my mom or my mother-in-law talked, I told them to be quiet, because I had to have a quiet environment. And I was even quiet when Grayson was crowning. So let me look at my notes real quick. During the pushes, I tried to stay as centered as I could and stay strong. When Grayson started crowning, I got so much of they call it the burning ring of fire. I could feel myself swelling, and I could see it in the mirror too. I swelled so much down there, even during the pushes, that it was so intense, this burning sensation. If you have a vaginal delivery, you know what I'm talking about. It is so intense. Finally, when Grayson started crowning, the nurses and my OB kind of started talking in their medical code and stuff, because at this point I was pushing so much and I wasn't having a whole lot of progress at this point. And so when it came to the end of me pushing, and after Grayson's head came out, the nurses told my mom and Joe to move and get out of the way. They jumped up on the bed with me, the nurses did, and were pushing Grayson's shoulder. She had a shoulder dystocia, and they were pushing Grayson's shoulder out from underneath my pelvis. And so that was so comfortable, feeling absolutely all of this. I felt like I was ripping like crazy, and having all of that pressure on my abdomen while they were pushing her shoulder out. But then Grayson came out. She was born at 1:48 p.m. So I started pushing at 12:10, and I had her by 1:48. So about an hour and a half of pushing. When I was pushing, though, the doctor said, okay, Caitlin, I'm going to have you do a few practice pushes. And his doctor's office is literally like 5 minutes away from the hospital. He said, I'm going to go have a couple of my appointments with some of my patients, and then, once you get closer, I'll come back and we'll do your delivery. Well, he was gone for maybe 10-15 minutes, and they said, okay, she's good at pushing, you need to get back here because she's going to have this baby. And as soon as he got back in, she was born. It was that quick and intense. As soon as he got back in the room, it was showtime. So I'm going to kind of read my mom's notes just so you guys get a good a good understanding of what happened in between, like during my whole pushing stage, because I felt like I was kind of all over the place. By 12:10, 10 centimeters, it was showtime. Each of us, this is my mom talking, each of us had a job to do. Joe had one leg and I had the other leg and counted. Vicky helped to support her back and shoulders, which is my mother-in-law. Helped to support my back and shoulders. I was allowed to have the birthing mirror, which kept me focused. The only time that I was vocal during this was when I had to push. During the pushes, I was centered and strong, and at one time, she even paused to touch the baby's head, which was so crazy. I did touch Grayson's head when she was crowning, and it felt so funny. Finally, Grayson came out. Grayson took about 15 seconds to give a good cry, which scared me to death because she wasn't crying right away. And I was having a lot of blood loss also at this point, so the OB worked on me while the nurses worked on the baby. At one point, though, I noticed that the nurses had left Grayson. She was on the little panda thing by herself, and the nurses and the OB, everybody came over and kept working on me because I wasn't clotting, or my uterus wasn't bogging down like it was supposed to. So, they actually left Grayson by herself for a few minutes while they came over and helped the OB work on me. Let's see. So like I said, Grayson was born at 148. She was 9.5 pounds. She was 21.5 inches long. She had perfect APGAR score, which is great. She was perfect in every single way. They checked her blood sugar right after delivery, and it was right there borderline. Her blood sugar was 46, and at 45 they have to take them to the NICU nursery to monitor their blood levels, and she was 46. So I was so happy because she could stay with me. She did latch on right away, and she started breastfeeding, but I barely had anything at this point. I just had that little bit of colostrum, and she wasn't satisfied, but it was enough to get her blood sugar up to 70. They checked her a couple hours later, and she did get up to 70, and so they weren't very concerned about her blood sugars, and they checked me right after delivery, and my blood sugar was 90, and so they weren't concerned about me at all either. All in all, we had a crazy but great birthing experience. The highlights were not being able to get the epidural. I am so proud of myself for doing it. Now, I still say naturally, even though I got that one dose of Nubane, towards the end, I had absolutely no pain medication, and I birthed her all natural. It was scary because she was a shoulder, but everything worked out perfect, and we had such a good delivery. I did not tear to the point where they had to do stitches. I was so swollen actually that he was afraid to even try and put stitches in, because he said since my swelling was so bad they would probably just rip. I did have some internal tearing is what he said. He called it internal scraping, that is healing up still naturally on its own. Bleeding right after delivery. I did have quite a bit of bleeding, like I said. They did get my uterus to, they call it bogging down. It's actually, the technical term is called involution. I just know this from nursing school. But my uterus did involute just fine on its own. We were just seeing my husband's face during delivery was something that I will never forget. He was amazing during the whole thing, and I could not have delivered her without him. He was such a good support, and I'm just so proud of him. He listened during our classes, and he was so good. If you guys have any questions for me at all about our labor experience, I may have left some things out. It was kind of blurry, but I will still keep you guys updated with some updates with Grayson and let you know how I'm doing. So I will talk to you guys later, and like I said, if you have any questions, just let me know. Bye.